Welcome to Lord Nightmare channel. We share scary stories with rainy ambience. I hope this video helps you in some way to sleep, relax, or just be entertained for a while. If you enjoy it, please think about subscribing and hitting the thumbs up button to help my channel out. Now let's begin. When I was 13, I met someone on Discord. He was funny, smart, and exactly my type. He was also 16. I, being 13, obviously wasn't very logical about the whole situation. We became close friends, and after about 3 months of knowing him, I told him I had feelings for him. We then ended up dating. We lived across the country from each other, and we were basically just friends. So we're dating, and he starts grooming me. As a kid who was always on the internet and exposed to kink, I was used to this behavior and thought it was fine. He had sent me nude photos, gross messages, and I pretty much worshipped him. I wasn't allowed to talk to people in Discord without him there and stuff like that. He told me he would take my life if I ever left him, or how he was always taking drugs because he was so sad. He was also incredibly racist and found Nazi jokes funny. I'm so mad at myself for not realizing that it wasn't okay back then. He ended up cheating on me with his ex and tossed me out the door like a rag. Doesn't talk to me anymore and says we shouldn't speak because we aren't together. And here's where it gets bad. New accounts start popping up in the server we met in. It was a server of a mutual friend, and he starts saying horrible things about me. Mary is a fat whale. Mary is the N-word, and more things of the sort. The accounts have names like Jerry Touches Kids or Big Fat Whale. I had gotten in trouble with the server owners because it was my fault that people were saying these things, like I had told them to spam things about me. The accounts started messaging me that I should take my own life, that I'm a whale, and more of the like. I ended up blocking every account and moving on with my life. Great, it was over. Or so I thought. Fast forward a year to the late summer of 2019, and everything starts up again. The messages, him telling people lies and rumors and direct threats. I was sent unsolicited pictures, death threats, slurs, and a message continually that I should take my life because no one cares about me. At that time, I had undiagnosed depression and anxiety and almost did end up doing what was asked of me. But then I went to therapy and tried to get over it. In 2020, right when quarantine happened, I got a boyfriend. I was super happy and came back out of my shell, and I would play games on Discord with him, and we joined more servers. Around 2 months later, I got another message. Someone had messaged me called Lily. It was a normal profile, and we were on a server together, so I thought nothing of it. She then had messaged me how I was, and I had never spoken to her before, so I was confused. She said we had a long conversation about mental health the day before, and she wanted to make sure I was alright. I asked her who she was and what she was talking about. And she said something like, "Oh, you told me about this. You said you take your medicine for schizophrenia, and you've missed a dose. Are you off your meds?" I was very confused and scared, because I'd never spoken to her in my life, and certainly didn't have schizophrenia. About 10 minutes of this charade, I realized it was Dennis. I blocked the account, and no longer accepted new friend requests. The next day, I got hundreds of messages with the same contents I previously mentioned. I asked my boyfriend for help. He told me to make a new account and not friend any of my other mutual friends so he couldn't find me. I did, which cost an affiliated Twitch account I'd spent years building. But I changed all my accounts, deleted most, and made new ones. I have no idea how, but the messages found me again. So I got fed up and had asked a mutual friend I thought I could trust some personal information about Dennis to go to the police and get a possible restraining order. I didn't totally know how the police handled these issues though. Months go by and nothing, until the fall of 2021, in which Dennis messages me calling me a stupid idiot, and how he'll always find me, how I'm fat and dumb and no one will love me. I isolated myself, and deleted more accounts. I was never able to go to the police because I had no information like his full name nor address. It's been 2 years, and every day I worry if he lives near me, if he knows where I live or go to school. I recently found out he has a website, and made YouTube videos. He made a lot of YouTube videos referencing me in 2022. His copyright claim is something like, "Marry the Fat Whale Inc." I can't find it anymore. It was hell, and I'm worried every day that he will find me. But I really hope he doesn't. I live with my boyfriend in his house that he owns. It's a modest house in a good neighborhood. Violent crime here is typically low. I say it's a modest house because compared to the other houses in the neighborhood, it's on the smaller side. But having a smaller house in this neighborhood is still very desirable because it allows us to still live in a nice town without owning a multi-million-dollar home. It's a single-floor, 3-bed and 2-bathroom house with a basement. We're on a very quiet block with a lot of privacy. The way the street curves provides us optimal privacy, as when we step outside of the house, there's not a single neighboring house directly facing us. There are 8 houses total on our block. Further down the block is a small wooded area. My boyfriend Mika was away one weekend in Vegas for a bachelor party last October. I was alone from Thursday to Monday. Friday after work, I had some of my girls over for a wine night. At some point while we were in the living room watching scary movies, the doorbell rang. We all went quiet and looked at one another with the same faces. The doorbell ringing late at night while watching a scary movie almost felt not real. I went to go sneakily see if I could see who was outside on the porch, but I couldn't get a view from the window. There is a tiny glass panel at the top of the door, so I peeked through it. There were like 4 cars in the driveway. They had to know people were home, but I didn't see anyone on the porch. I went back to my friends, and while we all agreed that was weird, we accepted that it was just a very unfortunately timed ding-dong ditch. After everyone left, it was late enough for me to go to bed and fall asleep right away. But I was awoken that night, not even an hour later, to the doorbell ringing twice. I looked at my phone and it was like 1 a.m. No one belongs outside your door at this hour. I immediately called Mika, and he picked up sounding really drunk in a loud bar. He had to go to a bathroom to be able to hear me. Once he heard me, he told me to just stay in the bedroom and not open the door to anyone. He never once suggested calling the police, so I refrained from doing that for now. We ended our call, and I tried to just stay calm and go back to sleep. Just as my heart rate started to slow and I started to calm down, I heard something from outside. Some kind of clicking sounds until there was a knock at my window. And a male's voice said, "Hey, anyone home? I need some help out here." I thanked the Lord the blinds were closed. I couldn't see who was out there, and they couldn't see me. Instead of leaving, he knocked again on the window. He said, "I know you're home." This was what prompted me to call the police. I never heard the man outside walk away from the window. For all I knew, he was still standing outside of it. So I whispered the entire time while on the phone, reporting someone trying to break into my house. Call me dramatic or an embellisher, but I was scared and I wanted the police here ASAP. Within 5 to 10 minutes, the doorbell rang again, followed by loud knocks. I went out and approached the front door and asked who it is. A male's voice said it's the police. It was a different voice from the other guy. I looked through the glass and confirmed there was a couple police officers. I opened the door for them, and right off the bat, the taller officer in front walked right into my house without my even inviting him in. He said they were responding to my report of a disturbance, and I said there's a man lurking around the house ringing the bell and knocking on my window. I don't want to make a big part of my recounting the story about this particular police officer, but he was the rudest man I'd ever met. I felt like he was on a power trip. He was demeaning towards me, telling me to shush and talking over me while I was trying to explain. He also didn't seem to take my claims very seriously. His partner didn't say a word, he just stood in the back. The taller one asked me details that I'd already made clear I wouldn't have, such as what the man looked like. When I clearly stated that I hadn't seen him, the officer actually said to me, "Well, you're the one who called us, ma'am. If you don't want our help, we can leave." I was taken aback completely. I'd never called the police before, and I never expected such a lack of professionalism. I apologized and said I'm just scared. It was around this time that the two officers walked around the house with their flashlights. They went full circle and then came back, but honestly, they didn't really check very thoroughly. I watched them through the windows. They came back to the door and told me there's nothing they can do if I don't have any cameras or proof of the man trying to commit any wrongdoing. The two cops then left. I didn't feel any better at all, besides the fact that maybe whoever that man was saw I called the police. I went back to bed, and thankfully the next time I woke up was to sunlight creeping in through the closed blinds. It was around 10 a.m. It was Saturday, and that night my friend was having a Halloween party that I was going to help set up for. During the day I did a little grocery shopping, and while I was at it picked up some things for the party. My costume was Velma from Scooby-Doo, and my friend throwing the party was Daphne. I got to her house around 6 p.m. The party started at 9 and it really picked up around 10:30. I was there pretty late, like I probably left her house a little after 1 a.m. I was good to drive as I didn't really drink much besides a few beers. When I got home, I immediately noticed a cool draft in the house. After setting my things down on the dining room table, I noticed the window open. I went to shut it, trying to remember why I would have opened it. I went to brush my teeth, but then when I came out from the bathroom, I noticed the basement door was wide open. I froze. This was when I started hearing this faint but consistent clicking sound. As I got closer to the basement stairs, I realized it was coming from down there. And then I got to the top of the stairs, and I looked down to the pitch-black basement, and the clicking suddenly stopped. A voice from below suddenly said, "You're finally home." With that, I slammed the basement door shut and took my phone with me outside. I banged on the neighbor's door until he answered, and I chose to call the police in the safety of my neighbor's house. It was unfortunately the same two officers who returned to my house. My neighbor accompanied me as I went to speak with them this time, and I think that may have had some kind of impact on that taller cop's attitude. He wasn't as rude this time. He and his partner checked the house while my neighbor and I stood in the living room. Eventually, after their initial search, I showed them some of the spots I'd imagined someone could be hiding. I basically tore the entire house upside down, while also on the phone with my drunk boyfriend. When I was sure that no one was here anymore, I packed a bag to go stay with my sister until Mika came back. This time I locked every window before leaving. The main takeaway lesson from my story is if you have windows that open wide enough for someone to crawl through, make sure they're always locked when they're closed. We still live in this house today, but for a few months, I refuse to be alone in the house for extended periods. I still have PTSD from this, and sometimes I have nightmares in which I think I'm hearing knocks at the window, and then I wake up. So this happened about a year ago. I'm a 28-year-old blonde woman, though I look around 18 to 22 or so I'm told. I recently went back to college for human resources, so I was on the GO train at 1 p.m. on a Monday to get to a 3 p.m. class. The train comes from outside the city and is usually very quiet during the day when it's not rush hour. I got on the train and walked upstairs, but decided to go to the middle area. There's a middle section next to the bathroom, because someone was humming, and I found it annoying. The washroom door was closed the entire time, and I didn't think anyone was inside. I was alone in the middle section with no one else around me. I was sitting comfortably with my jacket off, drinking tea from a bunny mug, with my backpack across from me. The GO train is typically a calm ride, and I was enjoying it. After about 5 minutes, a man popped out of the bathroom. He was around 22 years old, with fine line scars on his face in the shape of a heart and a 3D cube. He put his hands on my backpack, and I immediately thought he might try to mug me. I was ready to punch him in the throat and run, since I've dealt with attempted muggings before, though I've never been successfully mugged. But then he spoke. I'm gonna kill my father tonight, and I'm gonna make you help me. It wasn't my debit card he wanted. He wanted to hurt me. I currently work in mental health and am used to working with people with homicidal thoughts. I don't scare easily when someone says voices are telling them to kill, because I know how to handle it. But the situation felt different. I knew right away that this wasn't just a lonely guy reaching out for help. He wasn't seeking any assistance from me. I needed to leave, but his leg was blocking me in. I heard my voice shake as I said, "It sounds like you're going through a lot right now. I'm sorry to hear you're upset with your dad. Tell me about it." I grabbed my backpack, trying to stay calm. I knew I looked terrified, but I kept trying to talk to him. He didn't respond well. "No, you're not, damn it," he spat. "Women like you sleep with my dad, you effing bitch." He got closer, cornering me into my seat. He said he was going to make me help him kill his father with a knife tonight, because he was tired of pretty women like me, always ignoring him but screwing his dad. I felt terrified. We were only 2 feet away from the washroom, and I feared he might try to force me inside. My body went cold. His face moved closer to mine, and I screamed at the top of my lungs, "Help me, help, help." I didn't even recognize my voice, it was filled with terror. 4 strangers on the train immediately came running. 1 man, 2 young women, and 1 middle-aged woman. The man asked, "Are you okay, miss?" The guy across from me, visibly upset, started shouting, claiming I was calling for help because I'm a vain woman. He screamed that we were all vain and cruel, only wanting someone pretty not like him. I bolted upstairs as quickly as I could and couldn't speak for a minute. My hands were shaking. I had been in scary situations before, but this felt different. This wasn't my usual commute, and I wasn't on high alert like I normally would be at work. The man who came to help me saw the guy was still yelling. He told me to run toward the customer service train, and he'd make sure the man didn't follow me. We pressed the yellow security strip before I got up, but there was no immediate response from security. The guy who helped me later told me that the man left the train like nothing had happened. However, the 2 young women who had helped me took several pictures of him walking away and gave them to the police. I went to the customer service train, and the police arrived, but the man was gone. They spoke to me for a few minutes, mentioning they knew who he was because of his scars. They said he had done something similar the day before and might have mental health issues. I wasn't convinced they took it seriously. They didn't seem too concerned with my account. They asked if I had seen his knife. I told them no, but his behavior suggested he had one. The confidence in the way he spoke made me believe he had a weapon. The officers mentioned he had slapped another woman on the train earlier, and someone had reported seeing a knife. The police had been called before I pressed the security strip, but the customer service train guy didn't know that. He only knew what I had told him because no one else had pressed the emergency button until I ran to him. I just want to clarify that while someone with mental illness can have homicidal thoughts, it is not a symptom of who they are as a person, but rather a sign of how unwell they are at that moment. Not everyone with mental illness has violent tendencies, and many are incredibly kind and compassionate. I know many wonderful people who experience these kinds of thoughts during life transitions, and they do not scare me. This man might have had mental health issues, but his actions scared me deeply down to my bones. I'm so thankful that people came running when I screamed for help, and that the young girls took pictures of him. My gut tells me that if I hadn't started screaming, something worse could have happened. I sincerely hope that, if he was in fact unwell, they took him to a hospital for treatment, as I don't think he should be roaming free without help. The scariest part came the next day when I overheard a young woman, probably between 18 and 20 years old, crying at the train station. She was saying that she'd been so frightened by a man on the train that she had to hide in the washroom for the entire ride and called her parents to pick her up. I can't say for sure if it was the same man, but the possibility really bothered me. It made me think about how vulnerable young women can be, especially if they're too scared to speak up. It's been a few months now, and I've never heard from the police about whether or not they caught him. He didn't physically touch me, so maybe that's why it wasn't serious enough for them to follow up. But that experience has left me permanently anxious on my commute. I never sit alone anymore, never take my jacket off, and I'm never truly comfortable on the train anymore. To the scary man with the heart and box scars on his face, let's not meet again.